Detective Sarah Martinez had seen many crime scenes in her 15 years with the Miami Police Department, but nothing quite like this. The warehouse sat quietly in the industrial district, its windows dark and broken. Yellow tape fluttered in the humid Florida breeze as she stepped out of her unmarked car. The call had come in at 3:47 a.m. from a security guard making his rounds. Inside the warehouse, 8 men lay motionless on the concrete floor. Each one wore expensive suits, gold watches, and diamond rings that caught the harsh fluorescent lights the forensics team had set up. These weren't random victims. Detective Martinez recognized several faces from the organized crime unit's bulletin board back at headquarters. The first victim was Vincent "Vinny" Romano, a known associate of the Castellano crime family. He was found near the entrance, his phone still in his hand, as if he had been trying to make a call when everything went wrong. Next to him lay Marcus "Big Mike" Thompson, a loan shark who operated out of South Beach. The detective counted carefully as she moved through the scene. 8 bodies total, all positioned in a rough circle. What struck Detective Martinez as odd was the lack of obvious trauma. No bullet wounds, no knife marks, no signs of a struggle. The men looked almost peaceful, as if they had simply decided to lie down and never wake up. The only unusual detail was a faint smell in the air, something sweet and chemical that made her nose wrinkle. Dr. Emily Chen, the medical examiner, arrived just as the sun began to rise over Miami. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who had worked with Detective Martinez on dozens of cases. As she examined the first body, her expression grew more puzzled. "This is strange, Sarah," Dr. Chen said, looking up from Vincent Romano's body. "No obvious cause of death. No signs of violence. But look at this." She pointed to the man's fingernails, which had a slight blue tint, "and his lips have the same coloring. This suggests some kind of oxygen deprivation, but I need to run tests to be sure." The warehouse belonged to a company called Atlantic Shipping Solutions. According to the records Detective Martinez found in the office, it had been rented 3 months ago by a man named David Chen, no relation to the medical examiner. The lease was paid in cash, and the address listed turned out to be a vacant lot in Homestead. As the morning progressed, more details emerged. The security guard who found the bodies was named Carlos Mendoza. He told Detective Martinez that he had been working this route for 2 years and had never seen any activity at the warehouse before last night. Around midnight, he noticed several expensive cars parked outside, a black Mercedes, a silver BMW, a red Ferrari, and others. "I thought maybe it was some kind of business meeting," Carlos explained, nervously adjusting his security company cap. "Rich guys sometimes use these warehouses for private deals, you know. I didn't think anything was wrong until I came back around 4 hours later, and all the cars were still there. That's when I decided to check inside." The cars were still in the parking lot when Detective Martinez arrived. Each one was registered to one of the dead men inside. The keys were found in their pockets, wallets intact, expensive jewelry untouched. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong or a gang dispute. Someone had specifically targeted these 8 men. Detective Martinez called her partner, Detective Ray Collins, who was still at headquarters running background checks on the victims. Over the phone, he painted a picture of 8 very different criminals who shouldn't have been in the same room together. "It's like someone invited the guest list from a crime convention," Detective Collins explained. "We've got loan sharks, bookies, drug dealers, and enforcers. Some of these guys have been trying to kill each other for years. Vincent Romano and Big Mike Thompson have a history going back to a territory dispute in 2019. And get this, Tony Scarlett, the bookie we found by the back wall, testified against Johnny Rizzo in a federal case last year. Rizzo's the guy we found near the center of the room." The more Detective Martinez learned about the victims, the more confused she became. These men didn't work together. They didn't trust each other. Some of them were actively enemies. What could possibly have brought them all to the same warehouse on the same night? As she walked around the crime scene again, she noticed something else. Near the center of the warehouse, there was a small table with 8 chairs arranged around it. On the table were 8 envelopes, each with a name written in elegant handwriting. The envelopes were empty, but lab technicians found traces of powder inside each one. "Could be drugs," suggested Officer Kim Rodriguez, who was helping document the scene. "Maybe someone promised them all a big score?" Detective Martinez shook her head. "These guys are too smart to fall for something that obvious. And why would they all trust the same source?" She picked up one of the envelopes with her gloved hand, holding it up to the light. The handwriting was precise, almost artistic. Not the kind of writing she would expect from someone in the criminal underworld. The final piece of the puzzle from that first day came from the warehouse's security system. Atlantic Shipping Solutions had installed cameras 6 months earlier, but someone had disabled them the night before. The last recorded footage showed an empty parking lot at 11:30 p.m. By the time the cameras came back online at 6 a.m., the warehouse was a crime scene. As Detective Martinez prepared to leave the warehouse that evening, she felt a chill despite the warm Miami air. 8 dangerous men had been eliminated in one night without a single shot fired. No witnesses, no survivors, no obvious motive that connected all the victims. Someone very smart and very careful had orchestrated this, and they had done it so quietly that nobody saw it coming. The detective made a mental note to request additional security for herself and her partner. Anyone capable of taking down 8 hardened criminals without leaving a trace was not someone to underestimate. As she drove back to headquarters, she couldn't shake the feeling that this case was just the beginning of something much bigger and more dangerous than a simple murder investigation. 3 days after discovering the bodies, Detective Sarah Martinez sat in the police department's conference room, staring at a wall covered in photographs, documents, and red string connecting various pieces of evidence. The toxicology reports had finally come back, and Dr. Emily Chen's findings only deepened the mystery. All 8 victims were poisoned, Dr. Chen explained to the assembled task force. But here's what's really interesting. Each man was given a different poison. Vincent Romano died from ricin, Marcus Thompson from cyanide, Tony Scarlett from strychnine. The killer used 8 different methods to achieve the same result. Detective Ray Collins leaned forward in his chair. That doesn't make any sense. Why make it so complicated? One poison would have been much easier. Unless the killer wanted to send a message, suggested FBI agent Janet Walsh, who had joined the investigation due to the organized crime connections. Different poisons might represent different crimes or betrayals. This feels personal, Dr. Chen continued with her report. The delivery method was ingenious. Each poison was mixed into a flavored powder, the kind used to make energy drinks. The victims likely thought they were consuming some kind of performance enhancer or recreational drug. The sweet taste would have masked the bitter chemicals. Detective Martinez studied the crime scene photos again. The 8 empty envelopes on the table made more sense now. Each envelope had contained a personalized poison, carefully selected for its intended victim. Someone had done extensive research into not just who these men were, but how to kill each one most effectively. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Angela Reyes, a bartender at an upscale club called Platinum Nights, called the police tip line after seeing the victims' photos on the evening news. She remembered seeing several of them at her club exactly 1 week before their deaths. Detective Martinez met with Angela at the club during the afternoon, before the evening crowd arrived. Platinum Nights was the kind of place where Miami's wealthy and dangerous went to see and be seen. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and every surface seemed to be made of marble or gold. They were all here last Tuesday night, Angela explained as she wiped down glasses behind the ornate bar. Not together at first, but they kept glancing at each other. It was strange because some of these guys usually wouldn't be caught dead in the same place. Angela led Detective Martinez to a corner booth with a perfect view of the entire club. Around 11 p.m., they all started getting text messages. I noticed because they all checked their phones at almost the same time. Within 15 minutes, they had all left the club. Did you see who sent the messages? Detective Martinez asked. No, but I did overhear Tony Scarlett talking on his phone before he left. He said something like, "If this is legit, we all make enough to retire." Then he mentioned something about Atlantic Shipping and meeting at midnight. This was the first concrete lead connecting the victims before their deaths. Detective Martinez immediately requested phone records for all 8 men. The telecommunications company confirmed that each victim had received a text message from the same untraceable number at 11:17 p.m. on Tuesday night. The message was simple. Opportunity of a lifetime. Atlantic Shipping Solutions warehouse, midnight, come alone. Big enough for everyone. Back at headquarters, the task force tried to trace the phone number, but it led to a dead end. The phone had been purchased with cash from a convenience store in Hialeah, activated just long enough to send those 8 messages, then destroyed. Security cameras at the store showed a figure in dark clothing and a baseball cap, but the face was never visible. Detective Collins made an interesting discovery while reviewing the victims' financial records. All 8 of these guys were having money problems, he announced to the team. Vincent Romano owed $200,000 to a casino in the Bahamas. Marcus Thompson's loan business was being investigated by the IRS. Tony Scarlett had gambling debts all over the city. So someone knew they would be desperate enough to take a big risk, Agent Walsh concluded. Our killer didn't just study how to murder these men, they studied their weaknesses and motivations. The investigation took another turn when Detective Martinez received a call from Lieutenant Rodriguez in the robbery division. Sarah, you need to see this. We just got a report about a break-in at a chemical supply company in Kendall. Whoever did it knew exactly what they were looking for. Apex Chemical Supply had been burglarized 3 weeks before the warehouse murders. The theft was so precisely executed that the owners didn't even realize anything was missing until they conducted their monthly inventory. 8 different chemicals had been stolen, exactly the components needed to create the poisons found in the victims' systems. This wasn't a random burglary, explained Mr. James Patterson, the company's owner. Whoever did this had advanced knowledge of chemistry. They took specific quantities of very dangerous substances and left everything else untouched. They even used our own equipment to properly store the chemicals for transport. The security footage from Apex Chemical had been erased, but Detective Martinez found something the thief had missed, a fingerprint on the inside of a storage cabinet that contained one of the stolen chemicals. The print didn't match any of the victims or any known criminals in the database, but it was a solid piece of physical evidence. As the investigation continued, a pattern emerged that disturbed everyone on the task force. The killer had been planning this operation for months, maybe longer. They had studied each victim's habits, financial situation, and personal weaknesses. They had researched the most effective poisons for each target. They had stolen the necessary chemicals weeks in advance. This isn't random violence, Agent Walsh told Detective Martinez over coffee in the station break room. Someone wanted these specific 8 men dead for a specific reason. We need to find what connected them besides their criminal activities. Detective Martinez spent the rest of that day creating a timeline of the victims' activities over the past year. She looked for common locations, shared associates, or overlapping criminal enterprises. What she found was troubling. All 8 men had been present at a high-stakes poker game in a private mansion in Coral Gables, exactly 6 months earlier. The game was hosted by a mysterious figure known only as the Banker, who organized exclusive gambling events for Miami's criminal elite. According to her sources in organized crime, the Banker's games were legendary for their enormous pots and absolute discretion. That's our connection, Detective Martinez told Detective Collins as they prepared to visit the Coral Gables mansion. Something happened at that poker game, something worth killing 8 people to cover up. The mansion where the game had taken place was owned by a shell company that led to another shell company, which eventually traced back to a post office box in the Cayman Islands. The current residents were a retired couple from Ohio who insisted they had never heard of the Banker or any poker games. As Detective Martinez stood on the mansion's front steps that evening, watching the sun set over Biscayne Bay, she realized this case was far more complex than a simple multiple murder. Someone with unlimited resources and meticulous planning had orchestrated the deaths of 8 dangerous criminals. The question was no longer just who had killed them, but why someone with such capabilities had felt the need to eliminate these specific targets. The detective's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Stop looking for the Banker. Some games never end." The message disappeared from her phone 30 seconds later as if it had never existed. The threatening text message changed everything for Detective Sarah Martinez. She immediately contacted the FBI's Cyber Crimes Unit and requested protection for herself and her family. Agent Janet Walsh arranged for electronic surveillance of Martinez's phone and increased security around the police station. "Whoever sent that message has serious technical skills," explained FBI cyber specialist Agent Mark Torres during a briefing the next morning. The text was routed through multiple servers in different countries before reaching your phone. The auto-delete function required advanced programming. "We're dealing with someone who understands both chemistry and technology." Detective Ray Collins had been investigating the Banker's poker games through his network of confidential informants. What he discovered painted a picture of an operation that went far beyond simple gambling. The games weren't just about money, Collins explained to the task force. According to my sources, the banker used these poker nights to broker deals between different criminal organizations. Drug territories, money laundering arrangements, contract killings, major decisions were made at that table. The poker game 6 months earlier had been particularly significant. Intelligence from the organized crime unit suggested it involved a dispute over a massive cocaine shipment that had disappeared somewhere between Colombia and Miami. The shipment was worth an estimated $50 million, and its disappearance had created chaos in the drug trade. Agent Walsh had been working her own sources in the federal agencies.
DEA has been tracking that missing shipment for months, she reported.
It vanished from a cargo ship in international waters. The official story was pirates, but no ransom was ever demanded. Someone made $50 million worth of cocaine disappear without a trace. Detective Martinez began to see the bigger picture. What if our 8 victims were involved in stealing that shipment? Maybe the banker's poker game was where they divided up the profits or made the plan. Dr. Emily Chen called with additional information from the autopsies. "I found something interesting in the victim's clothing," she said over the phone. Microscopic traces of sea salt in the fabric. Not the kind you get from Miami Beach. This was from deep ocean water. These men had been on a boat in the past few weeks. The investigation led them to Miami's sprawling port complex. Detective Collins spent days reviewing shipping manifests and talking to dock workers. He finally found a security guard who remembered seeing some of the victims near the cargo terminals about a month before their deaths. They were asking questions about shipping schedules, the guard explained. Specifically about boats coming from South America. I thought they might be reporters or insurance investigators, so I didn't think much of it. Meanwhile, Detective Martinez was following the money trail. The 8 victims had all made large cash deposits into different bank accounts in the weeks following the suspected cocaine theft. Vincent Romano had deposited $40,000. Marcus Thompson put $60,000 into 3 separate accounts. The amounts varied, but the timing was consistent. They were definitely paid for something, Martinez concluded during a team meeting. The question is whether they stole the shipment themselves or were hired to steal it by someone else. The answer came from an unexpected source. Maria Santos, Vincent Romano's ex-girlfriend, contacted the police after learning about his death. She had been trying to stay away from Vincent's criminal activities, but she had information that might help the investigation. Vinny was excited about something big happening, Maria told Detective Martinez during their interview at a coffee shop in Little Havana. He said he and some other guys were going to make enough money to disappear forever. He showed me pictures of a boat and kept talking about the banker's retirement plan. Maria produced her phone and showed Detective Martinez several photos Vincent had sent her. The images showed a large cargo ship at sea, containers being moved by crane, and what appeared to be packages of white powder being transferred to a smaller vessel. Vinny said this was happening during a poker game, Maria continued. While everyone was sitting around the table playing cards, some of his friends were out on the ocean making the real deal happen. He called it the perfect alibi. The pieces were falling into place. The banker hadn't just been hosting a poker game. He had been orchestrating an elaborate heist. While 8 men sat around a card table in Coral Gables, their associates were stealing $50 million worth of cocaine from a cargo ship. The poker game provided the perfect cover, giving all participants alibis for their whereabouts during the theft. Agent Walsh contacted the Coast Guard to review their radar records from 6 months earlier. Sure enough, they found evidence of unusual boat activity in international waters on the night of the banker's poker game. A small vessel had approached and departed from the cargo ship's position, but no distress calls or suspicious activity had been reported at the time. The crew of the cargo ship had to be involved, Agent Torres concluded. You can't steal that much cocaine from a moving ship without inside help. Someone paid the crew to look the other way while the transfer happened. Detective Martinez began to understand the true scope of the operation. The banker had planned everything perfectly. 8 criminal associates provided alibis for each other during the poker game, while their hired crew stole the shipment. The stolen drugs were then distributed through the 8 men's various criminal networks, generating enormous profits for everyone involved. But something had gone wrong. Someone had decided that the 8 men knew too much or had become too much of a liability. The same person who had orchestrated the perfect crime had then orchestrated the perfect murders. The banker eliminated his own associates, Martinez concluded during a late-night strategy session. Maybe they got greedy and wanted more money. Maybe they threatened to expose the operation. Or maybe this was always part of the plan. The team's investigation revealed that the banker's identity remained completely unknown to law enforcement. No fingerprints, no photographs, no real name. Even the criminals who attended the poker games only knew him by reputation. He communicated through intermediaries and never appeared in person at locations where he could be identified. "It's like we're chasing a ghost," Detective Collins admitted. "How do you catch someone who doesn't officially exist?" Detective Martinez had been thinking about this problem all week. "We can't find the banker directly, but we can find his mistakes. Nobody plans the perfect crime twice. If he killed 8 people to protect his secret, he might make another move to protect himself from our investigation." Agent Walsh coordinated with multiple federal agencies to monitor any unusual activity in Miami's criminal underworld. Banks were asked to watch for large cash transactions. The Port Authority increased security around shipping operations. Known associates of the 8 victims were placed under surveillance. The breakthrough came 3 days later. Carlos Rivera, a small-time drug dealer who had worked with Marcus Thompson, was found dead in his apartment. The scene was different from the warehouse murders. This time it was made to look like a drug overdose. But Dr. Chen's examination revealed traces of the same exotic poisons used on the 8 men. "Our killer is cleaning house," Detective Martinez realized. Carlos must have known something about the cocaine theft or the poker game. The banker is eliminating anyone who could connect him to the original crime. As she left Carlos Rivera's apartment building that evening, Detective Martinez noticed a black sedan that had been parked across the street when she arrived. The driver was reading a newspaper, but she could see his eyes watching her in the rearview mirror. She was being watched. The investigation had gotten close enough to make the banker nervous. For the first time since the case began, Detective Martinez felt like she was making real progress. But she also realized that progress might come with a deadly price. Her phone buzzed with another untraceable text message. "Carlos talked too much. Don't make the same mistake." After receiving the second threatening message, Detective Sarah Martinez knew she was running out of time. The banker was systematically eliminating anyone connected to the cocaine theft, and her investigation was forcing him to accelerate his timeline. She needed to find him before he disappeared completely or decided she posed too great a threat. Agent Janet Walsh arranged for Detective Martinez and her family to stay in a safe house while the FBI set up a comprehensive surveillance operation. Every member of the task force was assigned protection details, and all their communications were monitored for additional threats. "We're going to use his paranoia against him," Agent Walsh explained during a strategy meeting at the FBI field office. "If the banker feels pressured enough, he'll make a mistake. People who commit perfect crimes often can't resist the urge to gloat or correct the record when investigators get too close." Detective Ray Collins had been analyzing the financial aspects of the case with federal accountants. They discovered that the missing cocaine had generated far more money than initially estimated. Street sales of $50 million worth of pure cocaine could have produced over $200 million in revenue. "That's enough money to disappear forever," Collins noted. The banker and his associates weren't just stealing drugs. They were stealing enough cash to buy new identities, new countries, and complete freedom from law enforcement. The team's forensic accountant, Jennifer Walsh, had traced some of the money through a complex network of offshore accounts and cryptocurrency transactions. "Whoever the banker is, he has extensive knowledge of international finance," she reported. The money was moved through banks in Switzerland, the Cayman Islands, Singapore, and Malta before being converted into untraceable digital currencies. Dr. Emily Chen made another crucial discovery during her examination of Carlos Rivera's body. "I found something unusual in his stomach contents," she told Detective Martinez over the phone. "Traces of a very expensive champagne, Dom Perignon 1996, that's a $2,000 bottle. Carlos didn't have that kind of money. Someone celebrated with him before killing him," Martinez concluded. The banker met with Carlos personally. That's a major break in his pattern. The champagne led them to Miami's most exclusive restaurants and private clubs. Dom Perignon 1996 was so expensive that only a handful of establishments in the city kept it in stock. Detective Martinez and Agent Walsh spent 2 days visiting high-end venues, showing Carlos Rivera's photograph to servers and managers. At Le Bernardin, Miami, an upscale French restaurant in South Beach, a sommelier named Philippe remembered Carlos. He was here 3 nights ago with an older gentleman, Philippe explained in his thick accent. They ordered our most expensive wine service. The older man paid in cash, $5,000 for dinner and wine. Philippe described the banker as well-dressed, probably in his 60s, with gray hair and expensive jewelry. He spoke with a slight accent that could have been European or South American. Most importantly, he had made a reservation using a credit card. The credit card belonged to a company called Mediterranean Holdings, which was registered to an address in Monaco. When Detective Martinez contacted Interpol to investigate the company, she learned it was a front for money laundering operations that had been active across Europe and South America for over a decade. We're not just dealing with a local criminal, Agent Walsh realized. The banker is part of an international organization. The cocaine theft was probably just one operation in a much larger criminal enterprise. FBI cyber specialist Agent Mark Torres had been monitoring all communications related to the case. He detected unusual internet activity coming from a luxury hotel, penthouse in downtown Miami. Someone was using sophisticated encryption software to communicate with contacts around the world. The digital signature matches the pattern we've seen from the banker's previous communications, Torres explained. Whoever is in that penthouse suite has been coordinating this entire operation. The Fontainebleau Miami Beach Hotel confirmed that the penthouse was registered to a guest named Alessandro Romano, who had paid for a month-long stay in advance. Hotel security provided surveillance footage showing a man matching Felipe's description of the banker entering and leaving the suite. Detective Martinez studied the footage carefully. The man moved with confidence and purpose, but something about his behavior seemed familiar. She had the tech team enhance the images and run them through facial recognition software, but the results came back negative. Whoever this was, he wasn't in any law enforcement database. The surveillance team positioned around the hotel reported that Alessandro Romano had been receiving regular visits from several known criminals in Miami's underworld. Money was clearly changing hands, but the visitors never stayed long enough for detailed observation. He's winding down his operations, Agent Walsh concluded. The banker is paying off final debts and eliminating loose ends before he disappears permanently. Detective Martinez decided to take a calculated risk. She arranged for Carlos Rivera's funeral to be heavily publicized in local media, hoping the banker would attend to make sure his latest victim was truly dead. Undercover officers were positioned throughout the cemetery and surrounding area. The funeral drew a surprisingly large crowd. Carlos had been more connected in Miami's criminal world than anyone realized. Detective Martinez watched from a distance as drug dealers, bookies, and enforcers paid their respects to the fallen criminal. Near the end of the service, she spotted him. Alessandro Romano stood near a large oak tree about 50 yards from the burial site. He was wearing a dark suit and sunglasses, looking more like a wealthy businessman than a dangerous criminal. For several minutes, he watched the proceedings with calm attention. Detective Martinez signaled the surveillance team, but before they could move, the banker did something unexpected. He walked directly to Carlos Rivera's mother and handed her an envelope. After speaking briefly with the grieving woman, he disappeared into the crowd of mourners. Mrs. Rivera later told Detective Martinez that the man had identified himself as one of Carlos's business partners. The envelope contained $10,000 in cash and a note that read, "Carlos was a good man who made bad choices. This should help with your expenses. He's playing with us," Detective Martinez realized. The banker knows we're watching him and he doesn't care. He's confident enough in his plan to take unnecessary risks. That evening, the surveillance team at the hotel reported that Alessandro Romano had checked out unexpectedly. When they searched the penthouse suite, they found it completely empty, except for a single envelope addressed to Detective Martinez. Inside the envelope was a handwritten note. "Detective Martinez, you've impressed me with your dedication and intelligence. The 8 men I eliminated were planning to betray me and steal money that belonged to others. Justice was served. Carlos Rivera was collateral damage. He knew too much and talked too freely. I regret the necessity. By the time you read this, I will be beyond your reach. Don't waste any more time looking for me. Some games are meant to end with everyone losing except the house." The note included detailed confessions to all 9 murders, complete with times, methods, and motives. It It was signed with a fingerprint that matched the one found at the chemical supply company. Alessandro Romano was giving Detective Martinez everything she needed to close the case. But he was also telling her that he had won. Hotel security footage showed Romano leaving through a service entrance 30 minutes before the surveillance team noticed his absence. He carried only a small briefcase and walked with the casual confidence of someone who knew he would never be caught. Detective Martinez stood in the empty penthouse suite, looking out at the lights of Miami Beach and Biscayne Bay. Somewhere out there, a master criminal was beginning a new life with hundreds of millions of stolen dollars. 9 people were dead, and the person responsible had just handed her a signed confession while disappearing into the night. The case was solved, but justice remained elusive. The banker had eliminated his associates, covered his tracks, and escaped with the perfect crime intact. He had never seen the investigation coming, but Detective Martinez was beginning to realize that maybe she had never seen him coming either. 3 weeks after Alessandro Romano's disappearance, Detective Sarah Martinez thought the case was finally closed. The signed confession had been authenticated, the crime scenes had been processed, and the FBI had officially classified the banker as an international fugitive. But sometimes, Detective Martinez learned, cases have a way of reopening themselves. The call came from Agent Janet Walsh at 6:30 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. "Sarah, you need to get down to the port immediately. We have another body and you're not going to believe who it is." Detective Martinez arrived at the port of Miami to find a scene that looked disturbingly familiar. A man in an expensive suit lay peacefully on the deck of a luxury yacht. No obvious signs of trauma, no signs of struggle. But this time the victim was someone she recognized. "That's Alessandro Romano," she told Agent Walsh as they stood over the body. "Our banker is dead." Dr. Emily Chen arrived within the hour and confirmed what Detective Martinez suspected. "Same method as the others," Dr. Chen reported after her preliminary examination. "Exotic poison, probably delivered in something he consumed voluntarily. But this time the killer left us a message. Pinned to Romano's jacket was a small card with elegant handwriting. The house always wins, but sometimes the dealer cheats." Detective Ray Collins had been searching the yacht while the medical examiner worked. The vessel was registered to another shell company, but it contained several interesting items. In the main cabin, Collins found financial records showing the movement of over $300 million through various international accounts. This wasn't just about the cocaine theft. Collins explained to the task force later that morning. Romano was running multiple operations across the Americas and Europe. Drug trafficking, money laundering, arms dealing. He was like a criminal CEO. Agent Mark Torres had been analyzing Romano's communications equipment found on the yacht. He was still actively managing criminal operations until the day he died, Torres reported. "I found encrypted messages coordinating drug shipments to New York, arms sales to Central America, and money transfers to accounts in Dubai." But the most interesting discovery came from Agent Walsh's interview with the marina staff. The harbor master remembered Romano arriving at the yacht 3 days earlier with a companion, an elegant woman in her 50s with dark hair and designer clothing. She seemed to know the boat very well, the harbor master explained. She had her own key and gave instructions to the dock workers about fuel and supplies. I assumed she was his wife or business partner. The marina's security cameras captured several images of the mystery woman, but facial recognition software again came back negative. Whoever she was, she had the same ability as Romano to avoid law enforcement databases. Detective Martinez studied the surveillance footage carefully. Something about the woman's posture and movement patterns seemed familiar, but she couldn't place where she might have seen her before. The woman moved with the same confident precision that Romano had displayed, suggesting she was equally comfortable in dangerous situations. Dr. Chen's full autopsy results revealed more details about Romano's death. He was killed by aconitine, a poison derived from the wolfsbane plant, she explained. It's extremely rare and difficult to obtain. The killer would need advanced knowledge of botany and chemistry to properly extract and purify it. Just like our original 8 victims, Detective Martinez noted, someone with the same skills and methods killed Romano. But why? The answer began to emerge when Agent Walsh received a call from Interpol. Alessandro Romano's real name was Alessandro Torretti, and he had been wanted by law enforcement agencies across 3 continents for over 20 years. But more importantly, he had a partner. Interpol has a file on a criminal partnership that operated throughout the 1990s and early 2000s. Agent Walsh explained to the team. Alessandro Toretti worked with a woman named Miranda Vasquez. They were known as the most sophisticated criminal duo in international organized crime. Miranda Vasquez had been presumed dead after a yacht explosion off the coast of Spain in 2003, but Interpol now suspected she had faked her death to escape, increasing law enforcement pressure. If she was still alive, she would be in her mid-50s, exactly matching the description of the woman seen with Romano. She's been planning this for 20 years, Detective Martinez realized. Miranda let Alessandro think she was dead, then watched him build a new criminal empire. When he got too successful and attracted too much attention, she decided to take everything for herself. The team's investigation revealed that Miranda had been methodically eliminating all of Romano's associates and stealing his criminal networks. The 8 men in the warehouse hadn't been working for Romano at all. They had been working for Miranda, helping her steal the cocaine shipment and frame her former partner. She played everyone, Detective Collins said with grudging admiration. The 8 men thought they were stealing from a drug cartel. Romano thought his associates had betrayed him. We thought Romano was the banker. Meanwhile, Miranda was orchestrating everything from behind the scenes. Financial records from the yacht showed that Miranda had already moved most of Romano's money to accounts she controlled. She had spent months gradually transferring funds while making it appear that Romano was expanding his operations. By the time she killed him, she had stolen over $200 million. Agent Torres found additional evidence in Romano's encrypted communications. Miranda had been feeding him false information for months, Torres reported. She convinced him that law enforcement was closing in and that he needed to eliminate witnesses. She basically tricked him into killing his own associates so she could take over his network without opposition. The elaborate scheme was becoming clear. Miranda had used the warehouse murders to eliminate Romano's most loyal supporters while simultaneously framing him for the crimes. When Detective Martinez's investigation got too close to the truth, Miranda had appeared as Alessandro Romano's mysterious companion, gaining access to his resources and preparing for her final move. But she made one mistake, Detective Martinez realized as she studied the evidence board in the conference room. She left that calling card on Romano's body. M for Miranda. She wanted us to know that she had outsmarted everyone. Agent Walsh coordinated with international law enforcement to track Miranda's movements. Customs records showed that a woman matching her description had flown from Miami to the Bahamas on a private jet the morning after Romano's death. From there, she could have traveled anywhere in the world using forged documents. Detective Martinez spent that evening reviewing every piece of evidence from the original warehouse murders. She now understood that every detail had been carefully orchestrated by Miranda. The different poisons, the specific victims, the timing. Everything had been designed to make Romano look guilty while hiding Miranda's involvement. "She's the most dangerous criminal I've ever encountered," Martinez told her partner as they worked late into the night. She manipulated an international crime boss, 9 murders, and an entire police investigation without leaving a single piece of evidence that led directly to her. But Detective Martinez had learned something important during her career. Every criminal, no matter how clever, eventually makes a mistake. Miranda Vasquez had operated in the shadows for 20 years, but now she had revealed herself. For the first time since the warehouse murders, Detective Martinez felt like she was hunting someone real rather than a ghost. The question was whether Miranda would disappear into her stolen millions or whether her pride would lead her to make one more move. Based on everything Detective Martinez had learned about the mysterious woman, she suspected Miranda wasn't finished playing games with law enforcement. As she prepared to leave the station that night, Detective Martinez's phone buzzed with a familiar message from an untraceable number. "The game was more fun than I expected, Detective. Thank you for the entertainment." Miranda Vasquez was letting her know that she had won, but she was also confirming what Detective Martinez suspected. This wasn't over. 6 months after Miranda Vasquez disappeared into the international criminal underground, Detective Sarah Martinez had returned to regular police work. The warehouse case was officially closed. The FBI had classified Miranda as one of their most wanted fugitives, and life in Miami had returned to normal. But Detective Martinez had learned that some cases never really end. The break came from an unexpected source. Isabella Romano, Alessandro's niece who lived in Naples, Italy, contacted the FBI after reading about her uncle's death in international news reports. She had information that changed everything the task force thought they knew about the case. Uncle Alessandro wasn't the head of the organization, Isabella explained during a video conference call with Detective Martinez and Agent Walsh. He was just the front man. There was always someone else making the real decisions. Someone he called La Donna, the lady. Isabella had grown up around her uncle's criminal activities and had overheard many conversations over the years. According to her, Alessandro had been working for a mysterious woman since the early 2000s, managing day-to-day operations while she planned long-term strategy. He was scared of her, Isabella continued. Uncle Alessandro was afraid of very few people, but he always seemed nervous when talking about La Donna. He said she was the smartest person he had ever met, but also the most dangerous. This revelation completely changed the team's understanding of the case. Miranda hadn't stolen Alessandro's criminal empire. She had been running it all along. Alessandro had been her employee, not her partner. And when he became too visible to law enforcement, she had eliminated him just like any other liability. Agent Walsh immediately contacted Interpol to revise their assessment of Miranda Vasquez. "We weren't hunting a former criminal who had returned to action," she explained to Detective Martinez. "We were hunting someone who had been actively running international criminal operations for over 20 years. The scope of Miranda's organization became clear as international law enforcement agencies shared intelligence. Over the past 2 decades, criminal networks across Europe, South America, and North America had been coordinated by someone matching Miranda's methods and style. She had been operating a criminal multinational corporation while everyone thought she was dead." Dr. Emily Chen received an interesting package at the medical examiner's office 3 days later. It contained detailed chemical analyses of the poisons used in all 10 murders, along with a note explaining the specific reasons each method had been chosen. The package was signed MV and postmarked from Monaco. "She's still playing games with us," Detective Martinez realized when Dr. Chen called to report the package. "Miranda wants us to appreciate how clever she was. She can't resist the urge to show off." The psychological profile developed by FBI behavioral analysts painted a picture of someone with an enormous ego disguised by careful planning and patience. Miranda's need for recognition and respect had driven her to build a massive criminal empire, but it was also her greatest weakness. Agent Mark Torres had been monitoring international communications for any trace of Miranda's digital signature. 3 weeks after the package arrived at Dr. Chen's office, he detected familiar encryption patterns in communications between criminal organizations in Switzerland and Brazil. "She's rebuilding her network," Torres reported to the task force. "Miranda is recruiting new associates and establishing new operations. She's not content to retire. With her stolen money, she wants to continue growing her criminal empire." Detective Martinez volunteered to coordinate with Interpol and the Swiss authorities to track Miranda's activities in Europe. The Swiss Federal Police had been investigating a series of sophisticated financial crimes in Zurich and Geneva that matched Miranda's operational style. Inspector Klaus Weber of the Swiss Federal Police met with Detective Martinez at the Zurich airport. "We have been tracking unusual money movements through our banking system," he explained as they drove through the city. "Someone with extensive knowledge of international finance has been manipulating currency markets and stealing from cryptocurrency exchanges." The Swiss investigation had identified several Shell D companies that were being used to launder hundreds of millions of dollars. The companies were all registered to different names, but the paperwork showed the same elegant handwriting that Detective Martinez recognized from the warehouse crime scene. "Miranda is using her stolen money to fund new criminal operations," Detective Martinez concluded. "She's not just hiding from law enforcement, she's expanding her business." Inspector Weber's team had tracked one of the shell companies to a luxury apartment building in Geneva. Surveillance footage showed a woman matching Miranda's description, entering and leaving the building regularly. She had been using the identity of Elena Marchetti, a wealthy Italian businesswoman. "We have been watching the apartment for 2 weeks," Inspector Weber explained. "But Elena Marchetti has not appeared since we began surveillance. We suspect she realized we were closing in and has already moved to a new location." Detective Martinez examined the surveillance footage and immediately recognized Miranda's distinctive movement patterns. Even with different hair, clothing, and makeup, Miranda moved with the same confident precision that had been captured at the Miami marina. The apartment had been abandoned, but the Swiss police found several items that provided important intelligence. Financial records showed that Miranda had been coordinating criminal activities in at least 12 countries. A map on the wall had locations marked in major cities around the world, suggesting a network far larger than anyone had suspected. Most importantly, they found a photograph of Detective Martinez taken outside the Miami Police Department. Miranda had been monitoring the investigation even after leaving Miami, keeping track of the people who were trying to find her. She sees this as a personal challenge. Detective Martinez told Inspector Weber, "Miranda isn't just avoiding capture, she's competing with law enforcement. She wants to prove that she's smarter than everyone trying to catch her." The international task force, coordinated by Interpol, had grown to include law enforcement agencies from 15 countries. Everyone was looking for Miranda Vasquez, but she seemed to stay one step ahead of every investigation. She had changed identities at least 6 times in 6 months and had moved money through banks on 4 continents. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Maria Santos, Vincent Romano's former girlfriend who had provided crucial information early in the case, called Detective Martinez from Miami. She had received a visitor who claimed to be writing a book about organized crime. The woman asked very specific questions about Vincent and the poker games, Maria explained. She seemed to know details that never appeared in the newspapers. When I described her to my neighbor, he said she looked exactly like someone he had seen in our building a few months ago, watching my apartment. Detective Martinez realized that Miranda was still cleaning house, eliminating anyone who might have information about her past operations. Maria Santos had been placed under police protection, but the incident confirmed that Miranda was continuing to take risks to protect her secrets. Agent Walsh received a call from the DEA with disturbing news. Intelligence sources reported that the South American drug cartels were being unified under new leadership. Someone with extraordinary organizational skills was bringing together criminal groups that had been fighting each other for decades. Miranda is building something much bigger than anything Alessandro ever imagined. Agent Walsh reported to the International Task Force. She's not just running criminal operations. She's creating a criminal empire that spans multiple continents. Detective Martinez stood in the conference room at Interpol headquarters in Lyon, France, looking at a world map covered with pins marking Miranda's suspected activities. From Miami to Monaco, from Switzerland to Brazil, from New York to Singapore. A pattern of sophisticated crimes had emerged wherever Miranda traveled. The woman who had started as Alessandro Romano's hidden partner had become the most successful international criminal in modern history. She had stolen hundreds of millions of dollars, eliminated dozens of rivals and witnesses, and built a criminal network that law enforcement was only beginning to understand. But Detective Martinez had learned something important during her months-long pursuit of Miranda Vasquez. Every criminal, no matter how intelligent or careful, eventually makes a mistake that reveals their location. Miranda's need to prove her superiority and her desire to stay involved in the investigation meant she would eventually expose herself. As Detective Martinez prepared to board her flight back to Miami, her phone buzzed with one final message from an untraceable number. "The game continues, Detective. Thank you for making it interesting. Until next time." Miranda Vasquez was letting her know that their cat-and-mouse game wasn't over. Somewhere in the world, the most dangerous criminal Detective Martinez had ever encountered was planning her next move. The 8 targets in the warehouse had never seen it coming, and neither had Alessandro Romano. But Detective Martinez was determined that next time, she would be ready. The case that began with 8 bodies in a Miami warehouse had become an international manhunt for a criminal mastermind who had outsmarted everyone. He thought she was dead. Dr. Emily Chen received an interesting package at the medical examiner's office 3 days later. It contained detailed chemical analyses of the poisons used in all 10 murders, along with a note explaining the specific reasons each method had been chosen. The package was signed MV and postmarked from Monaco. "She's still playing games with us," Detective Martinez realized when Dr. Chen called to report the package. "Miranda wants us to appreciate how clever she was. She can't resist the urge to show off." The psychological profile developed by FBI behavioral analysts painted a picture of someone with an enormous ego disguised by careful planning and patience. Miranda's need for recognition and respect had driven her to build a massive criminal empire. But it was also her greatest weakness. Agent Mark Torres had been monitoring international communications for any trace of Miranda's digital signature. 3 weeks after the package arrived at Dr. Chen's office, he detected familiar encryption patterns in communications between criminal organizations in Switzerland and Brazil. "She's rebuilding her network," Torres reported to the task force. "Miranda is recruiting new associates and establishing new operations. She's not content to retire. With her stolen money, she wants to continue growing her criminal empire." Detective Martinez volunteered to coordinate with Interpol and the Swiss authorities to track Miranda's activities in Europe. The Swiss Federal Police had been investigating a series of sophisticated financial crimes in Zurich and Geneva that matched Miranda's operational style. Inspector Klaus Weber of the Swiss Federal Police met with Detective Martinez at the Zurich airport. "We have been tracking unusual money movements through our banking system," he explained as they drove through the city. "Someone with extensive knowledge of international finance has been manipulating currency markets and stealing from cryptocurrency exchanges." The Swiss investigation had identified several shell companies that were being used to launder hundreds of millions of dollars. The companies were all registered to different names, but the paperwork showed the same elegant handwriting that Detective Martinez recognized from the warehouse crime scene. "Miranda is using her stolen money to fund new criminal operations," Detective Martinez concluded. "She's not just hiding from law enforcement, she's expanding her business." Inspector Weber's team had tracked one of the shell companies to a luxury apartment building in Geneva. Surveillance footage showed a woman matching Miranda's description entering and leaving the building regularly. She had been using the identity of Elena Marchetti, a wealthy Italian businesswoman. "We have been watching the apartment for 2 weeks," Inspector Weber explained. "But Elena Marchetti has not appeared since we began surveillance. We suspect she realized we were closing in and has already moved to a new location." Detective Martinez examined the surveillance footage and immediately recognized Miranda's distinctive movement patterns. Even with different hair, clothing, and makeup, Miranda moved with the same confident precision that had been captured at the Miami Marina. The apartment had been abandoned, but the Swiss police found several items that provided important intelligence. Financial records showed that Miranda had been coordinating criminal activities in at least 12 countries. A map on the wall had locations marked in major cities around the world, suggesting a network far larger than anyone had suspected. Most importantly, they found a photograph of Detective Martinez taken outside the Miami Police Department. Miranda had been monitoring the investigation even after leaving Miami, keeping track of the people who were trying to find her. "She sees this as a personal challenge," Detective Martinez told Inspector Weber. "Miranda isn't just avoiding capture, she's competing with law enforcement. She wants to prove that she's smarter than everyone trying to catch her." The international task force coordinated by Interpol had grown to include law enforcement agencies from 15 countries. Everyone was looking for Miranda Vasquez, but she seemed to stay one step ahead of every investigation. She had changed identities at least 6 times in 6 months and had moved money through banks on 4 continents. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Maria Santos, Vincent Romano's former girlfriend who had provided crucial information early in the case, called Detective Martinez from Miami. She had received a visitor who claimed to be writing a book about organized crime. The woman asked very specific questions about Vincent and the poker games, Maria explained. She seemed to know details that never appeared in the newspapers. When I described her to my neighbor, he said she looked exactly like someone he had seen in our building a few months ago, watching my apartment. Detective Martinez realized that Miranda was still cleaning house, eliminating anyone who might have information about her past operations. Maria Santos had been placed under police protection, but the incident confirmed that Miranda was continuing to take risks to protect her secrets. Agent Walsh received a call from the DEA with disturbing news. Intelligence sources reported that the South American drug cartels were being unified under new leadership. Someone with extraordinary organizational skills was bringing together criminal groups that had been fighting each other for decades. "Miranda is building something much bigger than anything Alessandro ever imagined," Agent Walsh reported to the International Task Force. "She's not just running criminal operations, She's creating a criminal empire that spans multiple continents. Detective Martinez stood in the conference room at Interpol headquarters in Lyon, France, looking at a world map covered with pins marking Miranda's suspected activities. From Miami to Monaco, from Switzerland to Brazil, from New York to Singapore, a pattern of sophisticated crimes had emerged wherever Miranda traveled. The woman who had started as Alessandro Romano's hidden partner had become the most successful international criminal in modern history. She had stolen hundreds of millions of dollars, eliminated dozens of rivals and witnesses, and built a criminal network that law enforcement was only beginning to understand. But Detective Martinez had learned something important during her months-long pursuit of Miranda Vasquez. Every criminal, no matter how intelligent or careful, eventually makes a mistake that reveals their location. Miranda's need to prove her superiority and her desire to stay involved in the investigation meant she would eventually expose herself. As Detective Martinez prepared to board her flight back to Miami, her phone buzzed with one final message from an untraceable number. "The game continues, Detective. Thank you for making it interesting. Until next time, M." Miranda Vasquez was letting her know that their cat-and-mouse game wasn't over. Somewhere in the world, the most dangerous criminal Detective Martinez had ever encountered was planning her next move. The 8 targets in the warehouse had never seen it coming, and neither had Alessandro Romano. But Detective Martinez was determined that next time she would be ready. The case that began with 8 bodies in a Miami warehouse had become an international manhunt for a criminal mastermind who had outsmarted everyone who tried to catch her. Miranda Vasquez had won every round so far, but Detective Martinez knew that some games are won by the player who makes the fewest mistakes, not the one who makes the most brilliant moves. The hunt for Miranda Vasquez would continue, but now law enforcement knew exactly what they were facing. The question was whether Miranda's pride would finally lead her to make the one mistake that would bring her down, or whether she would disappear into her stolen fortune and never be seen again. Either way, Detective Martinez would be watching and waiting for her next move.